Hey, deserving listeners, a lot of you have been asking me to react to the new audio from Britney Spears' hearing that happened recently, so let's watch.
Honest with you, I haven't been back to court in a long time because I don't think I was heard on any level when I came to court the last time. I brought 4 sheets of paper in my hands and wrote in length what I had been through the last 4 months before I came there. The people who did that to me should not be able to walk away so easily. I'll recap. I was on tour in 2018. I was forced to do. My management said if I don't do this tour, I will have to find an attorney.
Ms. Spears, I hate to interrupt you, but my court reporter is taking down what you're saying.
Okay.
And so you have.
All right, so the first reaction I have is this is probably a hearing over Zoom. A lot of court hearings due to the pandemic are online now. A friend of mine is actually a judge, and she actually likes it because she gets to work from home.
Speak a little more slowly.
Of course, yes. Okay, I apologize. Great.
Everything you're saying.
Okay.
Sure. Now,
the people who did this to me should not get away and to be able to walk away so easily. Recap. I was on tour in 2018. I was forced to do. My management said if I don't do this tour, I will have to find an attorney, and by contract, my own management could sue me if I didn't follow through with the tour. He handed me a sheet of paper as I got off the stage in Vegas and said I had to sign it.
Okay, so conservatorships are fairly complicated things in the legal world. I am not a lawyer, I'm a therapist, and I have worked with people who have been on conservatorships, and I've been to court sort of for these sorts of things, but they're pretty complicated. And from the outset and from the quote-unquote documentary that I reacted to in the past, I say quote-unquote documentary because the entire production was based on hearsay. It was a lot of people just speculating. And the whole time while I was reacting to that, I was having a hard time knowing what to say or what to think because we didn't have any firsthand accounts. But now we actually have a firsthand account from Britney herself, which is really great. It's wonderful to see. And it sounds like from the beginning that she has a lot of complaints, not only about the conservatorship, not only about the way the courts have treated her, but also the specifics of the conservatorship. Sounds like she is claiming that she was forced to go on tour, which, at least from my layperson's opinion as a non-lawyer, I would say that seems unusual. Conservatorships are in place to protect the individual and the people around them. It's not usually to put someone into slave labor, right?
After that, my management and my dancers and my assistant of the new people that were supposed to do the new show all went into a room, shut the door, and didn't come out for at least 45 minutes. Ma'am, I'm not here to be anyone's slave. I can say no to a dance move. I was told by my, at the time, therapist, Dr. Benson, who died, that my manager called him in that moment and told him I wasn't cooperating or following the guidelines in rehearsals. And he also said I wasn't taking my medication, which is so dumb because I've had the same lady every morning for the past 8 years give me my same medication, and I'm nowhere near these stupid people.
So her claim, which, we'd probably believe, that she's at rehearsal and her manager or choreographer, whoever is in charge of her production, is claiming she's not on her medication. They call the therapist. They say she's not complying with the dance move routine practicing. And this is chilling to me. To think that the conservatorship would become so global to Britney's life that it would control her on that level. And we've seen this before, actually, on a smaller scale, but a similar claim by Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. There's been movies and documentaries about this, but essentially a therapist had a lot of legal power. Not only was he Brian Wilson is a singer-songwriter, and so the therapist was treating Brian, but also had total control over his life, what he ate, when he recorded. He even made Brian co-write a song with him. The therapist considered himself a songwriter. It seems that this is another case of that. When you have corrupt individuals and you give them power over someone that they can make a lot of money and fame and power from, then there's at least a temptation or at least an invitation into the corrupt individuals using that power for evil. And instead of allowing Britney to make her own choices while helping her, because that's what the conservatorship is supposed to be there for. It's supposed to help her. It's not supposed to imprison her. So it sounds like something, or at least Britney's claim is that it was in an imprisonment. It was like she was being conspired against. Now, the other thing I will say is that we don't know what Britney is suffering from. We don't know her symptoms, or at least I don't. There's been claims that she suffers, in that quote-unquote documentary that I reacted to, there were like rumors that she suffered from bipolar or something, and that can mean a lot of different things. Bipolar is a pretty complicated disorder, and there are lots of different manifestations of it. It's episodic by its nature, and so it's just having that label. It's just like that could mean a lot of different things. Someone says they have bipolar. Kanye says he has bipolar, and I'm always like, well, what exactly is the experience? Just having that label almost means nothing. You really have to have the details. Some people are more severe. Some people, their manic episodes are extremely problematic, where others it's not as bad. Some people's depression can last for a year. Some depression lasts for a couple days. Anyway, so it's very complicated. So I don't know what she's suffering from, but there is a possibility that her disorder results in her having extreme symptoms that cause her to be a danger to herself and others, and that at least part of the conservatorship is legitimately in place to help her protect herself. And but we just don't know that. And there's also a possibility that in this moment, as she is telling this story, that it is distorted due to her symptoms. Now, she doesn't sound that way, but I will tell you, as someone who has treated people who suffer from bipolar or other conditions like that, they can come across like they are level-headed and they are non-distorted. But when you actually listen to what they're saying and you check on the accounts that they're telling, the stories that you're telling, when you actually double check to see if they're actually accurate or not, you will find that they are wildly off. Now, on the other hand, it can absolutely be used against someone because they do have a label of bipolar, that anytime they say something that bothers you, if you're the father and you're in power over her, if Britney Spears was to say anything that contradicts your power, you could say, that's bipolar, she's distorted, she's delusional, no one listened to her. So this is a very, very sticky situation for us on the outside looking in, trying to figure out what's exactly happening. At the very least, it seems that, and I remember from the previous documentary, that the conservatorship seemed questionable, particularly because Britney was saying, why does it have to be my dad? I don't mind the conservatorship being in place. I just don't want it to be my dad. So that starts to lend itself towards this legitimate notion that the father is abusing the power of the conservatorship. But we, as a viewer, just have to be careful about making claims based on very little information. And if you're a fan of Britney, then you're going to believe what she says. And again, take it from me, who has treated people with disorders, that it's hard to tell. Again, she sounds believable in this moment, but it's just hard for me to know. Maybe we'll find out more information that will give us some more ideas to the level of distortion at all that Britney is talking about right now.
Immediately, the next day, put me on lithium out of nowhere. He took me off my normal meds I'd been on for 5 years. And lithium is a very, very strong and completely different medication compared to what I was used to. You can go mentally impaired if you take too much, if you stay on it longer than 5 months. But he put me on that and I felt drunk. I really couldn't even take up for myself. I couldn't even have a conversation with my mom or dad really about anything. I told them I was scared, and my doctor had me on 6 different nurses with this new medication come to my home, stay with me, to monitor me on this new medication, which I never wanted to be on to begin with.
So again, putting Britney Spears' story aside, because I don't have any information as to tell me what's actually happening behind the scenes, I will tell you actual stories of people with bipolar who will struggle with medication. There are 2 things that I'm going to react to based on what Britney just said. One is that with medications, it often is something you have to dial in over time. There's pros and cons. There's usually some concerning side effects to medications for bipolar. It's not all good. The medications aren't all good. There's usually side effects that come along. And so usually you have to dial it in just right. And sometimes it changes over time, where the medication, the side effects will increase or decrease over time, or the benefits will increase or decrease over time. And so it is a struggle for people with bipolar, because it's really important, if you do suffer from bipolar, that your medication is dialed in correctly, because you do not want your mania kicking in. You do not want your depression kicking in. You don't want your delusions kicking in. You don't want your stress reactivity kicking in. But at the same time, you don't want the side effects to be so high that you can't function in life. So there's a very careful balance. And sometimes it's hard to manage that because sometimes we can't tell the difference between side effects of a medication or the benefits of a medication and the natural ebb and flow of their bipolar, or just the natural ebb and flow of someone's mood over time or their biology. So it gets very, very tricky. Lay people tend to think it's like, oh yeah, bipolar, you take this medication, everything is fixed. It's very rarely that way. It can be very frustrating to people. The other thing is you have to try medications for a long time to see if it works. A lot of times prescribers will say, well, let's give it 6 to 12 months and see how it works out. And you're like, wait, so I have to wait 6 to 12 months before I can evaluate whether or not this medication is even good for me or not? See, so that's one thing, and she's at least alluding to some of that. The other thing I'll say is that people suffering from bipolar are notorious for not liking to be on their medication because of the side effects and because the medication is designed to subdue their mania. And you could say there are two different main phases of mania. What we call hypomania, meaning that it's a little bit of mania, and then we have, full-blown mania. When you're hypomanic, your life is actually wonderful. You're in a wonderful mood. You have high self-esteem. You're getting things done. You have energy. You have confidence. You believe you can do anything, but not too much. You're not grandiose about it. You're getting things done. You have all these ideas. You're excited. People like you. Hypomania, if you've ever experienced that, you can attest to that. Or even just sometimes if you're just in a really great mood, like the sun is up and you got a great night's sleep and you just got a promotion or something and you're, everything, the colors are more vivid outside and everyone you see, you're just like wanting to hug. That's what hypomania can be like. It's not always like that, but it very much can be like that. So with bipolar and people go into hypomania, it is wonderful. It feels fantastic. The medication takes that away usually. And people with bipolar miss it legitimately and reasonably and understandably. They think, could we dial back this medication so I can, because I remember that feeling, it felt so good. And the other thing that can happen with people with bipolar is even though they're on medication, they're still having some ups and downs in terms of their symptoms. And one of the symptoms of early mania is I can do anything and I don't need anyone's help. And medication can sometimes be flagged by the person with bipolar of, I need to get rid of this because it's holding me back. And it is kind of true because it is holding them back from having hypomania, but they are a little distorted in their thinking regarding the consequences of being off their medication. So people with bipolar, not all of them, but a percentage of them are notorious for frequently going off their medications, incurring massive consequences from their symptoms returning, and then going back on medication and saying, I'm never going off my medication again. I can't believe I did that. Fast forward a couple years, and they're right back to that state of mind. They go off their medication, massive symptoms. Their life falls apart. They go off. People with bipolar struggle with that. So I have, similar to the last time I reacted to Britney Spears, I have no idea if Britney is in that camp or not. There's no data. Maybe we'll get some. Let's watch.
A lady came into my home for 4 hours a day, sat me down and did a psych test on me. It took forever. But I was told I had to then, after that I got off, I was told I had to then, after I got a phone call from my dad saying, after I did the psych test with this lady, basically saying I had failed the test or whatever. I'm sorry, Britney, you have to listen to your doctors. They are planning to send you to a small home in Beverly Hills to do a small rehab program that we're going to make up for you.
Okay, so we have another professional. This is all Britney's claim. This is her side of the story. If I'm understanding correctly, someone came to the home that was evaluating her and determined that she needed to do X, Y, and Z, and Britney didn't want to do those things. Okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean that the person assessing her was wrong? Does it mean the person assessing her was in the pocket of the father and just doing whatever the father needed to in order to get more power for Britney? Certainly that can happen. It's not usual for that to happen, but it could. Or was it a legitimate assessment, and at the time was Britney highly symptomatic and needed some sort of sanction in order to protect her and others? Because there's also kids involved, right? Parenting issues. For her to be symptomatic, it could be problematic for the kids. Not terribly so. It's not usual, but certainly you would be a little concerned about that. So, yeah, it's hearing her say that, it's just hard to tell. And I'm guessing a lot of y'all are Britney fans. I just hung out with my cat, and I have cat hair all over my face. So I keep rubbing it off my face. But I'm sure a lot of y'all are fans of Britney and want her to be happy. But for me, I'm trying to look at this and figure out what's going on behind the scenes, because I'm guessing we'll never actually find out. Similar to the quote-unquote documentary that I reacted to, there's a possibility that we'll never really know what happened because people will have different things to say.
You're going to pay $60,000 a month for this. I cried on the phone for an hour, and he loved every minute of it. The control he had over someone as powerful as me, as he loved the control to hurt his own daughter 100,000%. He loved it. I packed my bags and went to that place. I worked 7 days a week, no days off, which in California, the only similar thing to this is called sex trafficking, making anyone work against their will, taking all their possessions away, credit card, cash, phone, passport card, and placing them in a home where they work with the people who live with them. They all lived in the house with me, the nurses, the 24/7 security. There was one chef that came there and cooked for me daily.
So again, it's hard to tell. I can't talk about Britney because I haven't assessed her. I don't know the situation. I haven't heard any accounts from any of the clinicians. So I'm going to use this as a jumping off point to talk about other situations I've worked with. I have worked with people who suffer from bipolar, who, when clinicians and maybe family members are doing their best to actually help that individual, when their symptoms are going up and down, the person with bipolar will go through phases where they could become very distorted in their thinking, and they will look back at points in their life and they will say, I was being controlled. I was being persecuted. Everyone was against me. And of course, they weren't in the moment. In fact, in the moment, they might have been going along with it completely because they actually agreed with all the things that were happening. But as their symptoms start to change over time, they look back into the past and they see a different picture because it feels differently to them. Is that what's happening for Britney right now? I don't know. Similar to the documentary, on one end of the spectrum, this is all a result of her symptoms, and let's say her father isn't the best conservator in the world, but he's not terrible. On the other end of the spectrum, she is being completely controlled, and she's at best mildly symptomatic and is being controlled on this premise that she has a massive mental illness that she actually doesn't even have anymore. And they're over-medicating her, and they're putting her to work, and they're taking away all of her money, and they're putting her down. And she's this trapped person in this prison of mental illness that doesn't even exist, or somewhere in between. I'm worried that as I listen to this, I will get no more information to tell me exactly where it is. I mean, it certainly is starting to look like it's more towards the pro-Britney side as she tells this story, because she sounds credible as she tells the story. But again, I've talked to people who are symptomatic with bipolar, and they seem very, very convincing. There's a myth out there that when people are delusional or distorted with a mental illness, that they will sound crazy or something, and that's just not true. People with bipolar or people with delusions will, 99% of the time, the way that they will come across to you, there's no difference from then when they're delusional or not delusional. So based on what she's saying, it's impossible to tell. Let's continue watching.
During the weekdays, they watch me changed every day naked, morning, noon, and night. My body, I had no privacy door for my room. I gave 8 gallons of blood a week. If I didn't do any of my meetings and work from 8 to 6 at night, which is 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, no days off, I wouldn't be able to see my kids or my boyfriend.
Did she just say she gives 8 gallons of blood a week? Did she just say that? 8 gallons of blood? Let's rewind that.
For me, daily, during the weekdays. They watch me changed every day, naked, morning, noon, and night. My body, I had no privacy door for my room. I gave 8 gallons of blood a week.
So first off, she's saying she has no privacy to her body. She has no door, and people can look at her whenever they want to. So that, if true, does not seem okay. Now, on the other hand, if she went through a period of time where she was highly symptomatic, it isn't unusual for safety purposes for the patient that you might actually remove a door or remove the ability to lock the door or something. Who knows? But again, are we looking at some really terrible exploitation of this individual? It certainly seems possible since there's a lot of money involved. Or is she symptomatic right now and she's looking back and distorting the past? But she just said something that's interesting. She said she gives 8 gallons of blood a week. What would that, how many gallons of blood do we have in our body? Was that, or maybe she said 8 vials? Maybe she said 8 vials of blood a week. I don't know. Let's rewind. I got to hear that again.
During the weekdays. They watch me changed every day, naked, morning, noon, and night. My body, I had no privacy door for my room. I gave 8 gallons of blood a week. Okay.
So speculating about what that would mean, I think she clearly says 8 gallons, meaning gallons. So if it was 8 vials, that would make more sense because you actually do need to take blood samples when you are trying particularly new medication to make sure that the medication is not hurting your organs like your kidneys and your liver, that sort of thing. So on one hand, if it was a lot of vials of blood, that would make sense. 8 gallons of blood doesn't make any sense because I don't think we have that much blood in our body. And so is she complaining about the vials and she didn't want to do that? She felt like she was being controlled. In that case, we would have sympathy for Britney. On the other hand, is she exaggerating in this moment, or does she believe that she gave 8 gallons of blood? When you have distorted thinking, you might actually believe they took. So some of the people that I've treated with bipolar, and not everyone with bipolar will become delusional, but some will. And when you're delusional, you think all sorts of odd things, sometimes medically, because of the invasiveness that they will feel as they're being treated. Because their symptoms go up and then the system will kick in to actually try to help them. And there might be needles and there might be blood samples. And when you're in the throes of your delusion, it'll feel as though you're being physically attacked and you're being controlled. Or, I've heard some really just horrific things. And it's a lot of suffering. The medical team is actually trying to help the individual, but the individual is interpreting the medical help as an attack on who they are. And it's very, very traumatic for the individual going through that. But there's not any way around it, because if they don't perform that medical service, the individual could greatly harm themselves and other people. Now, are there practices that would be better for people going through bipolar so you could actually help them to get on board with it? Yes, absolutely. But I don't know. It's just hard to tell from. And I'm worried that by the end of this, similar to the last documentary, I'm going to be thinking, well, still have no idea. Need to talk to an independent party who evaluates the situation.
The whole world, I'm okay and I'm happy. It's a lie. I thought I said that enough. Maybe I might become happy because I've been in denial. I've been in shock. I am traumatized. Fake it till you make it. But now I'm telling you the truth, okay? I'm not happy. I can't sleep. I'm so angry, it's insane, and I'm depressed. I cry every day, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I don't think how the state of California can have all this written in the court documents from the time I showed up and do absolutely nothing, just hire with my money another person to keep my dad on board.
So on one hand, if she is being controlled and imprisoned and oppressed and conspired against, it would make absolute sense that she would be angry and crying and all sorts of emotions. If any of us were being controlled and conspired against and manipulated and harmed and invaded in various different ways, then yes, we would be angry, we would be hurt, we would be upset, we would cry all day long. It would happen. So there's that possibility. The other possibility is that she is highly symptomatic and everyone's trying to do best for her, and she is interpreting everything through the symptomology, and it's a story of persecution and conspiracies against her. I've seen both. I've absolutely seen people who have been oppressed and have legitimate feelings about that, and then as they have emotions, the system will say, oh, you're too emotional, there's something wrong with you, and they'll use that against you. Oh, you're hysterical, and they'll use that to oppress you even more. I've also seen people who have a whole team of, at the very least, neutral, if not highly empathetic, highly caring individuals, and the patient at the middle is interpreting everything as a conspiracy against them. So it's impossible to tell from her account right now. I will say that someone should actually look into this, and maybe this court proceeding will allow for that. A third party, a team of clinicians and lawyers who aren't on either side should go in there, and they're not being paid by either side, should go in there and take a look at everything that's happening top to bottom and then provide a report. Usually that doesn't happen, though, because each side has their own lawyers and each side will lie or spin reality to their own purposes. And then we on the outside are left wondering what's reality. So I don't know. Let's watch.
Ma'am, my dad and anyone involved in this conservatorship and my management who played a huge role in punishing at me when I said, no, ma'am, they should be in jail. They're cool tactics working for Miley Cyrus as she smokes on joints and stage at the VMAs. Nothing is ever done to this generation for doing wrong things. But my precious body, who's worked for my dad for the past fucking 13 years, trying to be so good and pretty, so perfect when he works me so hard, when I do everything I'm told in the state of California, allowed my ignorant father to take his own daughter, who only has a role with me if I work with him.
Okay, so what do I say about this? That the style at which she's presenting this information is confusing to me. Now, I don't know her life. She brought up Miley Cyrus there for a second. Now, maybe I'll know what she's referring to. But I wonder what's happening. On one hand, the judge understands because they're using language or touchstone examples that the court understands because they've been to court many times. Or Britney is very amped up, obviously, because she's finally been able to give it that she has a voice, and or Britney isn't even normally when she's just talking normally. She tends to bring up random examples sometimes. Okay, so that's a pro Britney perspective. The other perspective is that she's symptomatic right now, and her brain is moving very fast, and she is at least hypomanic, and she is bringing up examples that don't really track. And that's what you will find. It's one of the hallmarks of when you first meet someone as a clinician, when you're first assessing someone, one of the things that we look for is how well they're tracking and if they're making any sense as they're telling us things. It's not a huge indication of anything, but it's one box that we have to check in terms of assessing people when we first meet them. And there's a slight element, it's not very severe, but there's a slight element of the way she's talking that I'm having a hard time following. Now, I'm not in her world, and so if you're in her world, maybe this all makes sense. But again, if I'm going to use this as a jumping off point, if, say, she came into my office, and I've actually had clients like this, they'll come into my office and they just launch into this whole thing, and I'm left catching up. I'm like, wait, what's happening? And sometimes, not always, I would say a percentage of the time, what that indicates is mania. The person has a lot of things to say, and they think they're making sense, but they're not actually making sense, and they're not actually taking the time to make sure that you understand what they are conveying. There's a slight bit of that in her talk. It's, like on a scale from 1 to 10, it's like a 2. So it's not severe, and it could just be the way that she's talking, or it could just be I just am ignorant of the issues that she's talking about, and everyone in that Zoom call understands completely everything she's saying.
To you by just keeping the conservatorship going and also keeping my dad in the loop made me feel like I was dead. Like I didn't matter. Like nothing had been done to me. Like you thought I was lying or something. I'm telling you again because I'm not lying. I want to feel heard. And I'm telling you this again so maybe you can understand the depth and the degree and the damage that they did to me back then. I want changes, and I want changes going forward. I deserve changes. I was told I have to sit down and be evaluated again if I want to end the conservatorship. Ma'am, I didn't know I could petition the conservatorship to end it. I'm sorry for my ignorance.
Okay, so she's being told that in order to end or alter the conservatorship, she needs another evaluation, and that makes total sense. And I hope that she gets one. If she is legitimately being controlled, one piece of evidence that could help that is if someone comes in and says, well, you know, she's minorly symptomatic, but certainly not as symptomatic as what everyone is making it seem, and certainly not enough to justify the amount of control that they have over her life. So I hope that she agrees to this evaluation. Now, how do you choose the evaluator? Well, you'd have to choose someone that you could trust, someone that wouldn't be biased either way. And you can find those people. There's a lot of people that take their job very, very seriously, psychologists who will take a situation like this very seriously and will try to be as unbiased as possible. They're trained to be that way. Some are not very unbiased. Some psychologists can be extremely biased, particularly when they're in the pocket of one side or the other. They know who is paying their bills, and so they will please that person. So I hope that she agrees to an outside evaluation. That would actually really help her.
But I honestly didn't know that. But honestly, I don't think I owe anyone to be evaluated. I've done more than enough. I don't feel like I should even be in a room with anyone to offend me by trying to question my capacity of intelligence, whether I need to be in this stupid conservatorship or not.
Okay, so that's troubling. She is saying, I'm not going to subject myself to another evaluation, which is not going to help her. In fact, it makes her look like she's trying to cover something up, in all likelihood. I don't know. But to a court, they are going to consider that to be suspicious, I'm guessing. It also might even be a legal impossibility to change a conservatorship without some evaluation demonstrating that her symptoms are such that she doesn't need as much sanctioning anymore. Now, on the other hand, there's a possibility she has legitimate worries about psychologists and other assessors harming her by always being biased against her. Sexism exists in our society, and it also exists in my field. And it's been demonstrated through research that if a woman is, I don't know the specific research off the top of my head, but if a woman is being evaluated and she's very angry, it's probably more likely that she will be seen as hysterical or mentally ill because women are supposed to be angry. But of course, when you oppress women, they have natural anger. So I don't know if Britney in this moment is saying, okay, in order for me to change the conservatorship, I need an evaluation. But the track record I have with these evaluators is that they don't listen to me, they're biased against me, they're sexist against me, or they're in the pocket of my father or something. And so maybe she has legitimate reasons to avoid being evaluated, but I don't know.
I'm being overworked in that facility, of that rehab place. The rehab place will sue me. He told me I should keep it to myself, really. I would personally like to. Actually, I know I've had grown with a personal relationship with Sam, my lawyer. I've been talking to him like 3 times a week now. We've kind of built a relationship, but I haven't really had the opportunity by my own self to actually handpick my own lawyer by myself. And I would like to be able to do that. I would like to also.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems completely fair if she were to be allowed to pick her own lawyer. That seems like something that should be in place for sure. So if she's not allowed to pick her own lawyer, that sounds like a problem.
The main reason why I'm here is because I want to end the conservatorship without having to be evaluated. I've done a lot of research, ma'am, and there's a lot of judges who do end conservatorships for people without them having to be evaluated all the time. The only times they don't is if a concerned family member says something's wrong with this person and consider and other otherwise. And considering my family has lived off.
So again, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand, I don't know if Britney is actually informed about the way in which courts usually will end conservatorships. I'm stepping out of my zone of expertise for sure. But from my experience, it would be very strange for especially a conservatorship that is this involved, meaning that there were a lot of cases being made for a very robust conservatorship on her life. The conservatorship is very global, and there must have been justifications for that. Now, whether or not those were fair justifications, those are justifications that are in the past, and the court today will probably have to respect that. And in order to overcome and overrule all of that, you need to have some evaluation that says she's better now and everything's okay. She can function on her own. So I don't know, but I suspect that she is not making the best move here, refusing to get another evaluation. And again, there's a lot of possibilities. One is that she doesn't trust that the evaluator will be unbiased. Maybe she has a lot of justifications to be really quite concerned about having another evaluator because she's been wronged in the past. So there's that possibility. The other possibility is that she just wants to get this over with and she's misinformed about the law, or maybe she's informed correctly and I'm misinformed. And she's like, look, let's just move forward and let's just get rid of the conservatorship and hopefully you can trust me that I know what I'm doing. But the other possibility is that she knows that she's symptomatic and she knows that if she's evaluated that they will find her symptoms and that will justify the conservatorship. The other possibility is that she is mildly manic or full manic, and she has grandiose feelings of, I'm on top of the world and I don't need an evaluation and you're going to listen to me. So again, I have no idea if this is Britney's situation, but let me just tell you a possibility with someone with bipolar and how they might present. They might say something like, look, I know I'm okay. And you don't need, like, let me give you a hypothetical. Something like this actually happened that I know about, but I'll change things around so that it doesn't reveal who the person is. But the person walks into a restaurant, someone with bipolar, and they're in the throes of a manic episode, and they walk up to the the owner of the restaurant and they say, hey, what you're going to do is you're going to give me the best steak in the house. And I'm gonna sit at that table because that's my favorite table, and you're gonna give it to me for free because I will absolutely pay you back next week. I'm not only gonna pay you back, but I'm gonna pay you back 10 times over. And so let's go. And so I'm gonna sit there, and the owner of the restaurant is thinking, what is happening right now? This person is asking me, demanding that I let them sit there, which I guess is okay, and they're telling me to give them the best steak in the house, and it's going to be an IOU, and they're going to pay me 10 times as much. And the individual going through mania believes this to be the case. They are not lying. They think the world is their oyster, and I'm going to have the best steak, and you're going to give it to me, and I have all these things in the works that's going to make millions of dollars, and you'll thank me that you give me this steak right now, because right now I don't have any cash on me, but I'm going to be a millionaire next week because I have all these ideas, and you're going to give me that steak right now. So people with bipolar going through mania will exhibit behavior in that category. There's a lot of different examples of what that might manifest as like, because essentially what the person is going through is, again, they believe that they can do anything, and they can believe that everyone is their best friend as well, and they can be fairly forceful in getting things done in their life. And so there's another possibility that Britney is in that mode right now, that she's just like, look, I know I'm great. She even kind of said that. I don't know if I showed that clip, but she said something along the lines of, I'm perfect, everything's fine. I can't remember the wording she used, but now, I will also say there's a possibility that she is legitimately non-symptomatic, or at least, her symptoms are under control, and she has every reason legitimately to say, get this conservatorship off my back because it's completely unjustified. Okay, so I just want to allow for that. That's definitely a possibility. But there's nothing from this that tells me which one it is of all the 4 possibilities that I said. Let's continue watching.
I don't know. I'm talking to you today because I feel, again, yes, even Jody is starting to kind of take it too far with me. They have me going to therapy twice a week and a psychiatrist. I've never in the past they had me going, twice a week and Dr. Gold. So that's 3 times a week. I've never in the past had to see a therapist more than once a week. It takes too much out of me going to this man I don't know. Number one, I'm scared of people. I don't trust people with what I've been through. And the clever setup of being in Westlake, one of the most
So this is concerning. The conservatorship is forcing her to go to 2 therapy sessions and I guess a psychiatrist appointment every week. And she's stating right now she doesn't want to do those meetings, or at least she says she wants to limit them. So that is concerning. Even if you were symptomatic, why would you be forcing someone, particularly to go to therapy? You could imagine forcing someone to go to their med manager, their prescriber, because that's pretty important. But to force someone into therapy, that's pretty concerning. Now, on one hand, the pro-Britney perspective is this is a massive controlling conglomerate that is controlling every minute of her life, and it's all designed to gaslight her and to control her, and it's terrible for her. On the other hand, it's possible that as her symptoms ebb and flow, she actually enjoys therapy, but right now, given the ebb and flow of her mood, she is looking back and saying she hates therapy, which I've seen before. People with bipolar can come into my office one day and say, I love therapy, I love coming here, this is really helpful, and the next week they come in and they've completely rewritten the history, and they say that they never wanted to be in therapy with me and they've always hated me. And I mean, I haven't seen that sort of thing, but that along those lines. So again, I'm guessing you watched, you clicked on this video hoping that I would have some definitive thing to say, but it would be completely irresponsible for me to say anything about what I'm hearing. The range of possibilities is extremely big, and I'm not hearing anything that is telling me where we're at on that spectrum.
Exposed places in Westlake, which yesterday, paparazzi showed me coming out of the place literally crying in therapy. It's embarrassing and it's demoralizing. I deserve privacy when I go.
Well, that is true. The paparazzi stuff has got to end. I mean, imagine coming out of therapy and you're crying and the paparazzi are there. I mean, can't we change the laws? What are the laws? Are there any laws? I'm pretty sure there are laws, but they're definitely not robust enough. I mean, it's just unfortunate. And she's suffering already. And what I always say is a big part of the problem is that when we buy tabloids, we are paying for those paparazzi people to do that sort of thing. So if we stop clicking on the clickbait on the internet and we stop buying the tabloids, there won't be a market for those individuals to abuse individuals like Britney.
I was so...
Excuse me for interrupting you, but my reporter says if you could just slow down a little bit because she's trying to make sure she gets everything that you're saying.
Okay, cool.
And so if you could, that would be great.
I have been through, and the clever setup in Westlake is identical to Dr. Benson, who died, the one who illegally, yes, 100%.
So another hallmark of mania is speaking very, very quickly. So let me discuss the spectrum again. On the pro-Britney side, or the Britney is not symptomatic in this moment side, we would say, well, she's nervous. She really wants to get her point across because she's being controlled all the time. And so she's speaking very fast because she realizes she has a lot of points that she has to make, and she's speaking really fast. And when people have repeated, I think there's been twice where the judge has said, can you please slow down? It's just hard for her to register that. And maybe Britney's a very fast talker. Okay, so that is on that side. On the other end of the spectrum, she's in a manic episode right now, and she actually believes she's talking slowly when in fact she's talking really quite rapidly. And if she were to talk, though naturally she would be talking even faster than she is talking. People in mania, their brain is working so fast that their mouth also moves very, very quickly. So again, it's just impossible to tell. But it is one piece of evidence in the column of possible mania, but there's just no way to tell based on this information.
Abused me by the treatment he gave me. And to be totally honest with you, when he passed away, I got on my knees and thanked God. In other words, my team is pushing it with me again. I have trapped phobias being in small rooms because the trauma locking me up for 4 months in that place is not okay for them to send me, sorry, I'm going fast, to that small room like that twice a week with another new therapist I pay that I never even approved. I don't like it. I don't want to do that. And I haven't done anything wrong to deserve this treatment. It's not okay to force me to do anything I don't want to do.
Now, that I'll agree with, regardless of where we're on the spectrum. To force someone who doesn't want to go to therapy is almost always not a good idea, and could be an indication that even if she were symptomatic, that the conservatorship is going too far. The other thing I'll say is that, and I don't know because I'm not a part of the team that is working with her, but the fact that she is, it sounds like at least partially forced to work when she doesn't want to, or work in a way that she doesn't want to work, that's also extremely suspicious. It's also very possible that she's being exploited given how much money is at play right here. So I wouldn't be surprised if I was to just take a wild guess, and this is complete speculation, total speculation, that if an independent person and a team went in there and evaluated top to bottom, watched the situation for 6 months, I wouldn't be surprised if they found that she did suffer from a disorder, maybe bipolar. We haven't heard anything about that yet. And then in the documentary that we heard, we still didn't hear anything. Maybe bipolar or schizoaffective, something along those lines. So we would find that, and we would find that sometimes she can become a little distorted in her thinking, but not too bad in terms of how she sees things. That there are times when she likes to work, and maybe if the work was a little bit more down to earth, like shows that, because I think, doesn't she work in Vegas or something, and doesn't she work every day, I think? But anyway, the point is that maybe there's a happy medium where she works when she wants to, in a venue that she likes, in a way that she likes, and maybe the show isn't as great because given her ebbs and flows of her mood and her energy level, that means that she can't really work intensely with a production team the way that she would normally. I mean, to be able to do those massive productions, you've got to be working a lot, and you've got to be a high-functioning individual, energy, mentally, all those kinds of things. You have to be extremely disciplined, and your mental health has to be doing pretty well. But anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if an independent person saw that, yeah, let's put her in control of her career, but let's also be a little bit realistic about what she can handle and what she likes to do. And the father seems to be a little overzealous with the control, and maybe the conservatorship doesn't even need to be there, but maybe let's bring it down a number of notches, maybe like to a 20% level, and let's see how that works. And I wouldn't be surprised if in that mode, Britney would flourish much more. But it's hard to tell because on this end of the spectrum, she's extremely symptomatic, and if we reduce the conservatorship, she becomes a lot more symptomatic, a lot more out of control. She might even risk harming herself or the kids or other kinds of things. So it's just hard to tell.
By law, Jody and this so-called team I should be able to sue them for threatening me and saying, if I don't go and do these meetings twice a week, we can't let you have your money and go to Maui on your vacations. You have to do what you're told for this program, and then you will be able to go. So
again, on this end of the spectrum, if we're to believe Britney, then she is being oppressed, she is being mistreated, and she absolutely deserves to sue people for the things that they have done to her. So that is absolutely possible. On the other end of the spectrum, when people are experiencing the ebbs and flows of mood with bipolar or schizoaffective, they will become potentially distorted in their thinking and will threaten to sue people. It's not terribly common, but it's at least kind of a feature of mania, particularly if they're being imposed upon some way, that they will threaten to sue people when there are not legitimate suits to actually pursue.
Privacy. I deserve privacy. The whole conservatorship from the beginning, once the conservatorship from the beginning, once you see someone, whoever it is in the conservatorship, making them money and myself money and working, that whole statement right there, the conservatorship should end. There should be I shouldn't be in a conservatorship if I can work and provide money and work for myself and pay other people.
So that I agree with. It is a massive conflict of interest where you, as the head of the conservatorship, depend on a huge flow of money coming to you, and you can now pay a whole team of lawyers to demonstrate that she needs the conservatorship. You see the vicious cycle of that. As you force her to work and you say you can't see your kids if you don't work and all these kinds of things, all this money comes in. And then as a father, you can pay a team of lawyers and a team of psychiatrists and other psychologists to demonstrate that she needs the conservatorship. This is going to cause her to be very emotional and to struggle a lot, which is going to cause her to act out, because it's legitimate to act out in a situation like that, which causes more evidence that she needs the conservatorship, and the money keeps flowing in. That I absolutely agree with. The conservator should not benefit from the conservatorship in that way, right? Because of those reasons.
It makes no sense. The laws need to change. What state allows people to own another person's money and account and threaten them and saying, you can't spend your money unless you do what we want you to do, and I'm paying them? Ma'am, I've worked since I was 17 years old.
Yeah, there is some, and I'm sure it's a very rare situation. I mean, the vast majority of people who are on conservatorships don't work at all because it's hard. Well, I don't know the percentage, but anecdotally, I will say that a lot of people on conservatorships, it's hard for them to work. And so there isn't that conflict of interest. There definitely is that conflict of interest when it comes to Britney.
Every week in an office identical to the one where the therapist was very abusive to me. I truly believe this conservatorship is abusive. And now we can sit here all day and say, oh, conservatorships are here to help people. But ma'am, there's 1,000 conservatorships that are abusive as well. I don't feel like I can live a full life. I don't owe them to go see a man I don't know and share him my problems. I don't even believe in therapy. I always think you take it to God. I want to end the conservatorship without being evaluated.
Okay, so on one hand, she just doesn't believe in therapy, or she hasn't had any good therapy, or she doesn't need therapy. And she is saying, I don't believe in therapy, I believe in God, I believe in taking it to God, and that's okay. People don't have to like therapy, that's completely fine. On the other hand, it's possible that she actually has enjoyed therapy over the years, but in her current state, her current mood, she actually is distorted in terms of how she feels about the enterprise of therapy. Who knows?
They only gave me 2 options for therapists, and I'm not sure how you make your decisions, ma'am, but this is the only chance for me to talk to you for a while. I need your help. So if you can just kind of let me know where your head is. I don't really honestly know what to say, but my requests are just to end the conservatorship without being evaluated. I want a petition basically to end the conservatorship, but I want it to be petition to end it, but I don't want to be evaluated and be sat in a room with people 4 hours a day like they did me before. And they made it even worse for me after that happened.
Okay, so I don't know exactly what she's referring to there. Sounds like there's some other treatment program or evaluation program that she was involved in that was quite extensive. Typically, what would be involved in a conservatorship evaluation isn't that extensive. There's a number of interviews. They would interview people around her, and it wouldn't usually be very problematic to her. So I don't know what she's referring to there. So on one hand, on the pro-Britney side, the people in control, when they would do the evaluation of her, they would use the most extensive, most annoying evaluation process possible to her to bother her. And on the other hand, she is trying to avoid the evaluation because she knows that she's going to be found as symptomatic, and she doesn't want that. It's just hard to know.
Spa twice in Louisiana during COVID. For a year, I didn't have my nails done, no hairstyling and no massages, no acupuncture, Nothing for a year. I saw the maids in my home each week with their nails done different each time. She made me feel like my dad does. Very similar, her behavior and my dad, but just a different dynamic. Team wants me to work and stay home instead of having longer vacations. They are used to me sort of doing a weekly routine for them, and I'm over it. I don't feel like I owe them anything at this point.
Okay, so on the pro-Britney side, she's being controlled, and they are conspiring against her, and they're denying her just a normal life of being able to have a vacation and have normal freedoms because they don't want her to have that. Because they believe that that would cause them to earn less money, or maybe that would make her feel more free and thus less likely to buy into the conservatorship, and it'll lead down a road of freedom for her and less money for them. Okay, that's the pro-Britney side. On the other side, they have a lot of walls around her, so to speak, a lot of controls around her because through their experience over the past decades, when they allow her to go on vacation, her symptoms will become more erratic, or she'll go off her meds or whatever, and terrible, terrible things will happen to her and to others around her. So which one is it? It's hard to tell. It certainly seems like to me, and again, I'm just a layperson, I'm not the judge, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if people looking into this concluded that she deserves to have the conservatorship come down and that the father should no longer be the conservator. I wouldn't be surprised if rational evaluators would find that to be true. I'm guessing she would benefit from a little bit of help with the conservatorship, a little bit of help with her life and her, everyday functioning, but not as much as what they're doing, and definitely not the father as the person in control.
And I would like to progressively move forward, and I want to have the real deal. I want to be able to get married and have a baby. I was told right now in the conservatorship, I'm not able to get married or have a baby. I have a ID inside of myself right now, so I don't get pregnant. I wanted to take the ID out so I could start trying to have another baby, but this so-called team won't let me go to the doctor to take it out because they don't want me to have any more children.
So that is shocking, and I don't know the legality of that, but that certainly sounds to me as a non-legal professional to be extremely problematic. To not allow someone to have children seems to be a big problem. Now, on one hand, some people say, well, you don't know her. When she gets symptomatic, she's all over the place, and she's not a very good parent to her own kids, and so we are justified. But can we really do that legally to stop people and to force someone to have an IUD? That, again, as a layperson, I'm not comfortable with that, that's for sure. And again, it just sounds to me, from an outsider's point of view, that the conservatorship is going way too far. It's just like, okay, you're doing all of those things? All of those things are necessary? Because in my experience with conservatorships, they're not that involved. You might have someone not able to get into their bank account because when they get manic, they spend all their money. So they get an allowance or something. You might have a situation where they don't necessarily live by themselves. Maybe they live with a family member. You might have a situation where they don't necessarily have confidentiality with their professionals, in that the main family member has access to the client files and will contact the professionals much more often just to check in and make sure that everything is working okay. Things like that. But not, I'm going to force you to have an IUD, you can't have children, you can't hang out with your boyfriend, you can't get your nails done. I mean, it just sounds extremely controlling. So on one hand, it's extremely controlling and unfair and terrible, and she is being oppressed, and all of her statements are accurate. On the other hand, she is seeing things a certain way, and she's interpreting it as extremely oppressive when the other people involved would say, no, 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 we didn't do that. That was her choice that she did a while back, and now she's just inventing that that's our choice. That was not our choice. I've seen that before. I don't want to accuse Britney of that, partially because I'm guessing y'all are fans of Britney and would hate me if I said such a thing. But as an outsider, I just have no idea. And I've seen a lot of things in my career, and there's just a lot of possibilities.
On the phone forever, because when I get off the phone with you, all of a sudden, I hear all these no's, no, no, no. And then all of a sudden I feel ganged up on, and I feel bullied, and I feel left out and alone. And I'm tired of feeling alone. I deserve to have the same rights as anybody does by having a child, a family, any of those things, and more so. And that's all I wanted to say to you. And thank you so much for letting me speak to you today.
Okay, so I'm a little bummed out that I didn't really get any information that would help me as a citizen determine what the situation is really like. On one hand, I tend to believe people's accounts. When someone says they're abused, when someone says they were a victim of something, as Britney is, I generally believe them because so few people come forward with these kinds of things. And we have a history in our society of blaming the victim or not believing the victim. And so I do not want to participate in that culture of looking at Britney and saying, well, sure, that's what you say, but we all know that you're a crazy woman and you're going to say crazy. So I do not want to participate in that. So on one hand, I want to lean towards believing her and at least respecting her wishes for change and allowing her to have that freedom. She's a human being. She deserves to have some of those freedoms, right? She's not a convicted criminal. She has rights as a human being. And so on one hand, I'm very much leaning towards let's listen to her. But of course, I'm not in control of that. It's the courts. But hearing what I'm hearing and hearing other things, I'm thinking, well, let's give that a chat. Now, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I don't even know what her diagnosis is. That's how little I know of the situation. So that's where I'm leaning. On the other hand, I want to raise the possibility that there is so much we don't know that it's impossible for us to make a proper conclusion based on the information that has been fed us over the internet. So I'm a little bummed out that this didn't give more information, but I don't know why it would have. But I suspect there will be more things for me to react to in the future, and if anything comes up, email me and I will add it to the list. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.